Why is the Prime Minister arrogantly persisting with an aged care minister who clearly should be sacked from his job?
The Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The many serious issues that require addressing in aged care, and particularly the unacceptable circumstances that occurred in a number of facilities, was the very reason why the Aged Care Royal Commission was called in the first place. It is the very reason why the government, in particular, at the strong urging and recommendation of the Minister for Aged Care, has continued to increase funding for aged care by over $1 billion, Mr Speaker, every year. It is the reason why the Minister for Aged Care came to the Cabinet and said we needed to do more in aged care in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and did so, Mr Speaker, in response to the plan that was first launched back in March, Mr Speaker, and flagged in the COVID pandemic plan, Mr Speaker. And that has now led to $1.5 billion being brought and resources to bear in response to the COVID pandemic. And it is why, Mr Speaker, as a result of that effort, including the establishment of the Victorian Aged Care Response Centre, it is a result of those coordinated efforts both by the federal government and the state and territory governments, Mr Speaker, that while there have been terrible impacts in aged care as a result of the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic all around the world, but particularly in Victoria most recently, Mr Speaker, this is something that Australians understand. Australians understand, Mr Speaker, that the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on Australia, and that no part of our community and that no part of the facilities that Australians move in and out of on a daily basis are unaffected. And of course it's had an impact on aged care, but what I can say, Mr Speaker, is as a result of the government's efforts, despite the fact that there have been some terrible outcomes, Mr Speaker, in a number of centres, and for that, Mr Speaker, our condolences are expressed to those, Mr Speaker, who are involved with family members and residents. The truth is that some 8% of facilities in total in Australia, Mr Speaker, 8% in total have been affected by COVID infections, both by staff, Mr Speaker, and by residents themselves, and that compares to 56% in the United Kingdom. Mr Speaker, the actions that have been put in place by the government has ensured that we have been able to mitigate what has been a terrible blow as a result of COVID-19 across this country, including in the aged care sector. And despite the fact that there have been a number of cases, Mr Speaker, in facilities, Mr Speaker, the rest of the aged care sector has benefited from the measures that have been put in place. In relation to censures in the Senate, Mr Speaker, that is not a new thing. That is not a new thing, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, John Howard was censured by the Senate. Paul Keating was censured by the Senate, Mr Speaker. Gareth Evans was censured by the Senate, Mr Speaker. Graham Richardson was censured by the Senate. My good friend Graham, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, there have been George Brandis.
The Prime Minister's time has concluded. The Prime Minister's time has concluded, and I want the interjections can conclude as well.